Welcome to Crossroads. The FBI is working to take down the 764 child abuse and extortion ring. This is an online network engaged with the FBI is calling modern-day terrorism in America and targeting kids with really horrific stuff, actually. On another topic, the Trump administration is now investigating foreign companies accused of price fixing and manipulating the American food market, which is a big cause of prices being driven up on our food, actually. And also on the point of food and crops, President Trump is saying Mexico violated a treaty and they're restricting the U.S. water supply, which is affecting crops in parts of the U.S. We'll be talking about these topics, why they matter, today's episode. So make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's get started. Now, first of all, there's an online network you might have heard about, the 764 network. And this organization is a very sadistic group. They basically groom children and commit horrible crimes against them online. This includes sexual abuse, self-harm, even suicide. They entertain themselves with it. They spread videos of it. And apparently it's a global network now. The FBI is now working to take down this entire network. Again, the 764 group. Now, FBI Director Cashfield just announced some arrests. He said more 764 related arrests and indictments across the country last week. He said 5 individuals in 5 states arrested on charges including engaging in child exploitation enterprise and producing child pornography. He says this is modern-day terrorism in America, and the FBI will keep working daily to dismantle the network and all those criminal actors associated with it. Actually, on the point of the FBI, they've been having just tons of arrests of these guys. They've been arresting them all across the country, leaders in various states. They are doing it very strongly, going very aggressively against this. Dan Bongino, Assistant Director, Deputy, he's also been talking about it a lot. This seems to be a big focus of them, taking down this entire sadistic network. Now, here's more on the recent arrest from ABC News. It says this. The Justice Department has indicted a former Navy sailor and 4 others for allegedly leading an online extortion group that authorities say later helped spawn the global extremist network known as 764, which the FBI now describes as modern-day terrorism for its sadistic and violent tormenting of teens online. Which, by the way, you might not even see it. Kids are basically getting blackmailed, groomed into these things, and it's happening almost entirely on the internet. In their own bedrooms, and they're getting groomed, threatened, terrorized, and so on. Now, it says an indictment sealed Tuesday alleges that the earlier group, calling themselves Greggy's Cult, engaged in criminal enterprises that pushed young victims they found online to create child pornography and then blackmail them into engaging in self-harm, masochistic abuse, and other extreme acts of degradation live on camera simply for the enjoyment of members of the enterprise. What they've been doing basically, they get the kids to send sexual images of themselves. If you do that, even if you're a kid, it's actually a crime because you're disseminating, child pornography in that case. They then use that to blackmail and threaten the kids. Hey, if you don't want to go to jail, this is what you have to do now. And they groom the kids through those threats into doing worse and worse things. Torture your pet dog, kill your pet dog, harm your brother or sister, self-harm, even commit suicide. And this is what they're making these kids do by blackmailing them after they get these photos from them. Now, it says between January 2020 and January 2021, members of the group allegedly worked together to find and recruit minor victims on Discord or online gaming platforms. Discord, by the way, it's like an online chat program. It's very widely used. A lot of kids who play video games are on Discord. One of the largest online chat programs. And there are different groups on there. This group has been searching out children using that app. And it says from there, it has even urged victims as young as 11 years old to abuse their siblings and to kill themselves, telling one minor victim to overdose on medication or hang himself from a ceiling fan, the indictment alleges. It says also members of Greggy's Cult would host sexually explicit live events with victims on Discord and record the sessions, using those recordings to then blackmail victims into engaging in even more extreme acts, according to the indictment. I mean, just horrifying stuff. Now, in terms of the people they arrested, these are the guys. It says the indictment charges 22-year-old Camden Rodriguez of Longmont, Colorado, 22-year-old Romaldo Valdez of Honolulu, Hawaii, 26-year-old Zachary Dosh of Albuquerque, New Mexico, 28-year-old David Brillante of San Diego, California, and 29-year-old Hector Bermudez of New York, with a total of 10 counts related to engaging in a child exploitation enterprise, producing child pornography, and making threats across state lines. Not all 5 men face all 10 counts, it says, but sick stuff. On these recent arrests, Kash Patel, he said this: "In the FBI, we are cracking down on online abuse against children like never before." He says almost 500% increase in nihilistic violent extremism arrests. By the way, that's what they're calling this type of terrorism, nihilistic violent extremism. And he says, and over 20% increase in FBI arrests directly related to the 764 network. They've actually arrested a lot of these guys. He says, thanks to local partners working with us. He also says, and we have hundreds of cases all across the country taking down participants in this vile network every single week. He says this is one of the most important issues in America. We're proud to partner with leaders on Capitol Hill to help uproot every last criminal actor who enables this. So this is horrifying stuff happening all across the United States. They have made a lot of arrests on it. They're continuing to make arrests on it. The recent ones are not just against 764, but even against like offshoot organizations, or one they say was like the origin of some of it, which they call Greggy's Cult, and they're taking them down. This is also a big difference in terms of, I'd say, U.S. law and like the UK, where the United Kingdom is trying to like make censorship laws to prevent online abuse, but is allowing mass grooming of children and sexual abuse and rape of them. In America, of course, we're a free speech country. America, the United States, is trying to protect free speech while also actually going after people doing this to kids. And so they're actually going after these organizations. Now look, on another topic, the Trump administration is now investigating foreign companies that are accused of price fixing and manipulating the American food market. We'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, 2 precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. The Trump administration is now investigating foreign companies that are accused of price fixing and of manipulating the American food market, which is apparently driving up the cost of food here. If you've been wondering on the price problem and why cost of groceries is so dang high, well, may not be all of it, but the Trump administration, they're saying that it's foreign companies doing this artificially and possibly even violating the law while doing it. Now, as part of this, Donald Trump brought in a rice farmer to speak about what's been happening in the industry. This is Merrill Kennedy of Kennedy Rice Mill. Watch.
It has been monumental for our industry. But us in the South are really struggling. I mean, this is not just a crisis. I would say it's almost a market dynamics that really are true anti-competitive nature, right? So it follows what you sent out this weekend. And we do believe that countries are dumping rice into this country today. We've never seen imports this great.
Which countries?
India, Thailand, even China into Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico used to be one of the largest markets for U.S. rice. We haven't shipped rice into Puerto Rico in years. So this has been happening for years. This didn't start during your administration, but unfortunately, we're seeing it in a much bigger way now. The tariffs are working, but we need to double down because
You want more? I mean,
well, they're cheating, right? They're they're just subsidizing and then
India. Tell me about India. Why is India allowed to do that? They have to pay tariffs. Do they have an exemption on rice?
No, sir. We're still working on their trade deal. So
Yeah, but they should be dumping. I mean, I heard that from others. So you can't do that.
We'll see what this means for India in particular, because as they note, the U.S. trade deal with India is still being negotiated. But the reality is it's not just them, right? That's one product, rice, one product in the food industry, and there are a lot of them like this. Foreign companies, foreign ownership, dumping products on the market, dumping it into like American economy, and of course causing all kinds of problems with the food industry here. Meat is going to be one of the big ones, especially I'd say when it comes to the ownership of foreign companies of American meat processors. Because what's been happening with beef, for example, you have a handful of companies, like 4 companies, and these meat processors work as the bottleneck for almost the entire industry in the United States. The cause of the high cost of beef is not because of the farmers or ranchers, it's not because of the cowboys, it's because of the meat processors. They're the ones driving up the costs, they're the ones putting more money on it, not the ranchers. They have not increased their prices for it. They're also being kind of strangled out of business in many cases. There is a lot of foreign manipulation in the American food industry, and this is now being looked into. And I mean, on this also, this isn't even just about the cost of food overall. It's also about American competitiveness, right? The incentive to actually become a farmer in America. Like, who wants to do it these days? Because it's a lot of work and there's not a lot of money in it, and a lot of farmers are in huge debt all the time. And if we lose that, well, what are we, right? This is also a huge part of our GDP. We might not think of it this way, but crops are huge parts of the U.S. economy. In fact, even rice is one of the main GDP products of the United States. You wouldn't think, hey, American rice, because typically the rice you buy in the grocery store is not the best. Okay, get ready to get mad a little bit. The good American rice we sell to other countries, a lot of stuff sold in the stores is stale rice because a lot of us don't know any better. A lot of grocery stores stock the old stale rice and they sell the good rice to other countries. Actually, America grows some of the best quality rice in the world. As was mentioned in that video early on, actually, a lot of the really good American rice is sold to like Japan and so on. That's fancy, good quality American rice, and we just eat the garbage typically. Look, also on this point as well, though, it turns out there's a lot of manipulation, not even just on food and food prices, but also in natural resources. President Donald Trump is accusing Mexico of violating a treaty by restricting the U.S. water supply. And he notes this is even affecting crops in parts of the country. Trump said on Truth Social that Mexico continues to violate our comprehensive water treaty, and this violation is seriously hurting our beautiful Texas crops and livestock. He notes that Mexico still owes the U.S. over 800,000 acre-feet of water for failing to comply with our treaty over the past 5 years. He says the U.S. needs Mexico to release 200,000 acre-feet of water before December 31st, and the rest must come soon after. He notes that as of now, Mexico is not responding. And he says it is unfair to our U.S. farmers who deserve this much needed water. This is why he says I have authorized documentation to impose a 5% tariff on Mexico if this water is not released immediately. He says the longer Mexico takes to release the water, The more our farmers are hurt. Mexico has an obligation to fix this now. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, briefly on this note, Mexico has been facing a pretty serious drought in the north. They're not doing so well when it comes to water either, but they are accused again of violating a treaty with the United States by restricting the flow of water to the United States. Trump's talking more about the part of Mexico closer to Texas. They do it in other parts. Actually, in San Diego, Mexico tends to just dump raw sewage into the ocean, which then flows to American beaches. So, I don't know, maybe that's them releasing water, just dumping raw sewage onto our soil. But that's what's been happening with Mexico. Now, also on another point, though, in Florida, right now something big is happening. Florida is now following Texas. They're designating the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations, that's CAIR, as foreign terrorist organizations. And as I briefly noted, this follows similar designations against the groups in Texas, and also recent executive orders from Trump that does not technically do the designation, but begins the process to designate certain chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations. So based on this now, Florida, Texas, designated terrorist organizations. The U.S., some chapters in process just of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, this is the State of Florida website. It says this: protecting Floridians from radical Islamic terrorist organizations. And it says, now, therefore, I, Ron DeSantis, as governor of Florida, pursuant to my solemn constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed and to preserve the public peace, do hereby promulgate the following executive order to take immediate effect. Section 1, the Muslim Brotherhood and any chapter or subdivision thereof. Meaning it's not just a couple little branches, it's the entire Muslim Brotherhood and any offshoot of it, the entire organization. And he says as well, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, and any other organization designated by the United States as a foreign terrorist organization under Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act are hereby designated as terrorist organizations for the purpose of this executive order, which is a big deal. It basically means that not only is Florida going further than the Trump administration in terms of these designations, because the Trump administration is not going after CAIR, they're just going after some branches of the Muslim Brotherhood. Florida's designating all of them and any sub-branches as well, and also recognizing basically the federal government's designation of all terrorist organizations, which is kind of there anyways, but they're taking it to a much further extent. It says, Section 2, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the Florida Highway Patrol are directed to undertake all lawful measures to prevent unlawful activities in Florida by the terrorist organizations designated in Section 1. And this is interesting because, we'll see what this actually means. This means the police and highway patrol are going to be carrying out operations against them. Now, why would highway patrol be involved? Probably tracking down people traveling, but we'll find out. It says, unless prohibited by federal or state law, all other executive and cabinet agencies shall further undertake all lawful action to prevent any terrorist organization designated in Section 1 or any person known to have provided material support or resources to such organizations as defined in Section 775, and it goes into it, which is a Florida statutes from receiving any contract, employment, funds, or other benefit or privilege of such executive or cabinet agency or any entity regulated by such executive or cabinet agency or from any county or municipality of the state. Now look, this is a big deal because it's not even just Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR at this point. What does it mean if Florida is now saying that if you have received money, contracts, employment, benefits, privileges, basically anything, in any way tied to a terrorist organization, it means that basically if you have ties to any designated terrorist organization, they're going to track you down, they're going to go after you, finances, otherwise. And while they say this is about Islamic terrorism, it's not limited to it. The Section 1 part, they say all or any terrorist organization designated by the United States. And guess what? What else is a terrorist organization right now? Well, the Mexican drug cartels, the Cartel of the Suns, Tren de Aragua, many other organizations. If those are designated as terrorist organizations, what does that mean? It means any individual who has made an exchange with them, has any entity tied to them, has employment tied to them, any benefit or privilege tied to them, then they can be investigated, denied services, otherwise. Now, who might that entail? Well, hypothetically speaking, any illegal immigrant who came into the United States and had to pay these organizations to be trafficked, right? Because as we know, the cartels control the checkpoints of the border for the most part and do most of the human trafficking, at least on the Mexico side. If you have illegally come into this country, there's a very good chance that you had some kind of encounter with the cartels and you paid them. Now, can they prove this? We don't know. Can they go after it? We don't know. But we might just find out. And so Florida, while this is mostly, at least on the surface, targeted against Islamic terrorism, it's not limited to it. They go further in stating this, though. Section 3, the Domestic Security Oversight Council shall conduct a comprehensive review of existing statutes, authorities, regulations, and policies for addressing threats from the terrorist organizations designated in Section 1, meaning all of them, and submit recommendations for any additional action needed by the Governor, the President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives by January 6, 2026. Now, again, if you go into the broader context of what is a terrorist organization, that's a lot of them, and that's probably a lot of people. But if you take that broad interpretation and apply it even just to the Islamic extremism part, how many mosques were tied in with money, tied in with CAIR, or the Muslim Brotherhood? How many individuals were tied in with it, at least on the political side of Islam? That's a lot of them. And they could argue, well, it used to not be a designated terrorist organization, it's a new designation, and these groups used to basically function as like pseudo nonprofits. This new designation takes it a lot further, and it means that the state of Florida, at least, and we'll see how Trump does it at the federal level, the state of Florida, at least, is going to be looking into any individual with any transactions, any relations, any ties to any of these organizations, or any of their offshoots, which means a lot of them. This is actually very sweeping. And, we'll see what it means when it's actually carried out, right? Now, meanwhile, also, the U.S. military is carrying out operations to destroy drug trafficking networks and cartels, especially in Venezuela, blowing up their boats, posting videos of it. And this could potentially even lead to a power shift in Venezuela. Why? Because the country's leader, Nicolas Maduro, is also the leader of the Cartel of the Suns. And the Cartel of the Suns is now a designated terrorist organization. And what do we do to terrorists? Well, we blow them up. And Trump is suggesting he might just do that, by the way. And now what else is happening? Donald Trump is saying, well, sniff, sniff, I smell more terrorists because the cartels are terrorists. And he's saying that U.S. operations may not end in Venezuela targeting the terrorists. And where else are cartel terrorists? Well, Mexico is a big one, and so is Colombia. And Donald Trump is now saying Mexico and Colombia could be next. This is the Daily Mail on this. It says this: Donald Trump did not rule out expanding U.S. military operations beyond Venezuela to Mexico and Colombia. It says the president said in an interview taped this week that he would consider using military force on 2 U.S. allies in Latin America. We'll see how allied they are in these operations, apparently. It says Trump cited Mexico and Colombia's drug trade into the U.S. as he continues threatening to overthrow Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And it says as well that Mexico is the primary country for trafficking a variety of narcotics, including heroin, fentanyl, and cocaine, into the U.S. And Colombia is the largest producer of the latter substance, cocaine, right? This is a big deal. A huge part of Mexico's economy is drug trafficking and remittances from illegal workers in the United States. Without basically robbing and taking advantage of the United States, Mexico doesn't have a lot of power. Not to mention the fact that a lot of their manufacturing industry is American trade. If they lose this, they're kind of done for. When it comes to the tariffs and Trump going after them, we'll see what that means. Mexico is not in a good state. The other reality is for a long time, it's very difficult to get elected to public office in Mexico if you at least don't turn a blind eye to the cartels, let alone work with the cartels. Otherwise, they kill you, as we've seen happen over and over again, including all throughout the past year. Candidates, political candidates, mayoral candidates murdered because they said they were going to do something against the cartels. Now the federal government in Mexico trying to stop the Trump administration from destroying the cartels because they're suggesting that it violates Mexican law, apparently. Even though they say they want to go after them, they're not going to let the U.S. go after them. Now, Trump said this, though. He says, I don't want to rule in or out. I don't talk about it. Trump said when asked about deploying troops to Venezuela, he says, I don't want to talk to you about military strategy. And so Trump is doing what he's been doing for a while, where he's kind of not detailing U.S. military strategy because you gotta pass it to find out what's in it. You gotta wait and see what happens. And as things currently stand, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. On the point of launching military operations into Mexico, though, Trump has been very openly talking about this. He's been pushing to have American operations to destroy the cartel networks all throughout Mexico. He says that basically U.S. military intelligence, we already know the locations, the houses, the grow houses of basically every Mexican cartel member. Trump says we know all of them. The problem is happening right now, though. The Mexican government is trying to stop the U.S. from destroying the cartels. The Mexican government is saying that American military operations on Mexican soil is a line that shall not be crossed. And they're saying that it's America's fault that the cartels are engaged in the drug trade because Americans buy the drugs, and therefore it's our fault that their people get involved in crime because people buy it. And remember also when Trump was on the campaign trail, he said that he'd use the military to destroy the cartels on just a massive scale. And he said that any country, and this is where it gets interesting, Trump said if any country or any official in any country tries to stop him from destroying the cartels, he will expose their connections to the cartels. And that's going to be big bad news for Mexico, by the way, because they have mass protests right now that are basically under suspicion that major figures in the Mexican political system are in fact working for the cartels and are actively protecting the cartels from U.S. operations and from being destroyed. The Mexican people have basically been told mass murder, violence, people burning down buildings with innocents in there because they want to kill like a rival cartel member, no-go zones, war zones, murders on par with like a massive, like basically failed state. And they're being told that, hey, we're doing our best to go after the cartels and this is just the reality. And when America says, hey, we can destroy the cartels, we know where all the people are, we want to go in and bomb them, destroy them, Mexico says, not so fast. How dare you try to destroy our precious cartels? And people are not very happy about it. The Trump administration is now suggesting that they might do something. And what you're watching unfold right now in Venezuela, Mexico, and Colombia also might be next. Will that actually happen? We don't know. Because frankly, a lot of stuff's being said that we don't really see things happening on, so we shall wait and see. On another topic, though, something big with the military, the Pentagon is now launching an AI program from the U.S. military. And this is big because it's actually not just about the Pentagon. I'll explain in a bit. But they're announcing a new program. It's called Gen AI. This is Secretary of War Pete Hegseth making the announcement. Watch this.
The future of American warfare is here, and it's spelled AI. As technologies advance, so do our adversaries. But here at the War Department, we are not sitting idly by. Under the leadership of President Trump, America will lead the charge on this technological transformation by revolutionizing the way we win. And that's why today we are unleashing GenAI.mil. This platform puts the world's most powerful frontier AI models, starting with Google Gemini, directly into the hands of every American warrior. At the click of a button, AI models on Gen AI can be utilized to conduct deep research, format documents, and even analyze video or imagery at unprecedented speed. Building on the great work of Undersecretary Emil Michael and his team, we will continue to aggressively field the world's best technology to make our fighting force more lethal than ever before. And all of it is American-made. The possibilities with AI are endless. Now, let's get to work.
Now, this is big for a few reasons. Well, first off, hey, American military using AI. This is bigger than that. Aside from the potential of, real world uses of AI for military research and so on, this matters on a whole different level. Why is that? Because what's being said about AI right now? They're saying AI is a bubble. Why is it a bubble? Because it can't make money. What happens if you can't make money with something? Well, people invest in it and then hope the investments stick. You risk having a dot-com bubble. It bursts. Some companies stand, a lot of them don't. What happens when the military pays into it? When the military basically subsidizes it? Well, that's what's happening now. What you're watching is the U.S. military backing a major company that is creating AI. What does that mean by extension? This functions as a pseudo-government subsidy of the industry, meaning it's not going to go out of business now. This is going to prop it up. A military contract, that's the golden ticket. If you get a military contract for your company, you can overcharge them, up the wazoo. You can make a lot of money. That's your golden ticket. That thing's not going to go away. And so the American military now having a contract with AI and major AI company, this will keep them pretty heavily propped up. You're probably not going to see them go out of business because of this. It's my personal take. Also on the AI front, on the military level, this will help ensure that America does not fall behind on AI when it comes to national security and warfighting, because all else aside, that is one big concern. I don't like artificial intelligence very much. A lot of people have concerns about it. The guys who make it are literally saying it's going to kill us all and destroy humanity within a few years, apparently. Typically, if the creator of a monster is telling you it's going to murder us all, you should probably listen to him. And that's what all the guys making AI are saying publicly. The problem they have, though, is that even if America gets rid of AI, other countries are making it. China's a big concern with this. Russia's a big concern with this. Heck, Europe's a big concern with this. All countries are a big concern with this. And the concern is that if America does not keep on the forefront of this, we're going to fall behind. And all those drones we watch flying around Ukraine, dropping bombs on people's faces, that's the future of war. And whoever controls AI has the best drones that drop bombs on people's faces the best. Without AI, you're not going to win future wars unless it goes away entirely. That's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So the U.S. military being involved directly on it ensures that key strategic element is not lost. We'll see with the public sector element of it, but this is where it's at. Also, meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security has also published a brand new online service. And what is this brand new online service? It's a dictionary of depravity. And this is in particular the depraved actions of illegal aliens they're deporting. They've actually launched a brand new website with a searchable database of criminal records of illegal aliens being deported. And it lets you basically do a search on their platform of your town or any town you want. And you can read the kinds of people they're arresting and sending back home. And they don't have to go home, but they can't stay here, right? Homeland Security says this. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is highlighting the worst of the worst criminal aliens arrested by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That's ICE. Under Secretary Noem's leadership, the hardworking men and women of DHS and ICE are fulfilling President Trump's promises and carrying out mass deportations, starting with the worst of the worst, including the illegal aliens you see here. And you can go try it out yourself. Part of this, though, I'd say ties into the whole war of words right now. There's a narrative battle over the deportations. You know, is it the Maryland dad? Oh, poor Maryland dad being deported. Or is it the MS-13 gang member who is doing human trafficking and, you know, carrying out MS-13 operations in the United States getting deported? Is it his MS-13 tattoos, or are those just random tattoos that you should pay no attention to? You decide. The reality is the way you interpret this is going to change quite a bit depending on which media you're reading or watching. And a lot of the establishment media, they've been publishing articles one after the next defending illegal aliens. They're arresting American citizens. They're making a child stand before trial to get deported. They're framing ICE and federal agents as masked individuals. Maybe official, maybe not. And people acting in the cover of darkness, swooping up, abducting people, throwing them in vehicles, and then flying them off to other countries. Is that how you interpret it, or do you interpret them as, you know, arresting actual criminals and so on? Well, DHS, they're challenging many of these articles you've been seeing in the media, and what they're doing is they're showing the actual criminal records of these people in these stories. Pedophiles, murderers, people violating gun laws, gang members, cartel members, you know, you name it. People robbing Americans, people stealing identities, and they're sending them, maybe not home, but sending them somewhere else. Free ticket to Uganda for some of them, we'll see where else. But as the title suggests, this is also the worst of the worst. And that's kind of the other side of the argument. What's being shown here is not all of them. They're showing you the examples on their side of the narrative. So do you like it? Do you not? You let me know. Tell me in the chat. And any other questions, comments, anything, leave it in the chat. Let's jump into some questions. So first off here, let's see. This is from Jen Reinbald. You're saying, we have known about these processing center issues for years. Why is nothing done about it? Are regulations so hard for small companies to be able to process meat and make money? Yeah. So you're talking about the squeeze on the meat industry. And it's true, it's been known for years. Basically, in the United States, there are 4 companies that basically control all the processing of meats. And you might say, well, geez, if that's the bottleneck, if that's why we have to pay so much money for meat, why don't they just build more processing facilities for meat? Good question. The simple answer is red tape, the regulatory state, not real capitalism. In fact, you would call it state capitalism, or a type of restrictive measure, a mixed model economy, meaning socialism, frankly. You know, you have government interference in the open market, and the government interference in the open market is causing an artificial squeeze on the market, and that artificial squeeze in the market is what's leading to you paying so much to buy meat. If you've been longing for your carnivore diet and you can't afford it, blame the regulations that make it so that 4 companies have a monopoly over the entire industry. And it's terrible too. Not only is it putting a squeeze on the amount of meat available, it's causing the prices to go up, and it's also making it so that ranchers can only, it makes it so ranchers have to kill parts of their herds. They can't sell parts of their herds, and for them it's terrible. You have a lot of ranchers not making money, which is destroying the incentive for doing the business in the first place. You have people going out of business because of this. It's a very terrible thing, actually. All right, another question here. MS Wilma 2. You're saying American companies have been selling out to foreign countries for decades. Here's the result. Duh. And I would agree with you. And this is a big thing. So we can talk about monopoly. We can talk about, capitalism, right? Capitalism, it's the evil capitalists. What we are seeing the problems of right here, which is causing the driving up of prices for Americans, is not real capitalism. What you're watching is the regulatory state. You're watching what's called a mixed model economy or state interventionism. What do you call that? You call it socialism light, not real capitalism. What do you call that? You call it cronyism. And because we have a system of mass cronyism and state capitalism or mixed model economy type stuff, you have a lot of foreign buyers, and what they're doing is they make money off oil or by doing all kinds of other manipulations. They swoop in, they use their state-run companies like China, for example, and they buy up key GDP industries to decentralize their economies and to control key industries in other countries that are stable, like the United States. And so China, buying up key parts of the meat industry, like which they've been doing, Smithfield Foods being one of the big ones, buying up parts of it. They then are able to do global price fixing, at least, I don't know about Smithfield, but according to the Trump allegations, foreign companies doing price fixing, coordinating with each other outside of U.S. borders in order to artificially drive up the cost of foods, meaning the high cost of living for Americans is being manipulated. The reason meat costs so much, the reason produce costs so much, the reason you can't afford to rent a home or buy a home, a lot of it is because of foreign manipulation of the markets. Foreign purchases of homes, mass illegal immigration, foreign purchases of businesses, global price fixing, foreign purchases of farmland, strangles on the economy, monopolies established in order to squeeze the economies and drive up prices, thereby creating more value of the held assets, whether it be land or real estate. And then, of course, government policy restricting the creation of new land and new industries in order to create natural competition, which would be capitalism, but we're not allowed to have it because of state interventionist policies squeezing the market. This is the reality of what we're watching right now. And the real terrible thing, you have a lot of voters my age and younger than me now, right, who think that the system is broken. And they mistake this as being broken because of capitalism. This is not a problem of capitalism. This is a problem of state interventionism. And state interventionism predates socialism, but a lot of it does tie to socialist policies. This is not capitalism. We do not have a true capitalist society. This is cronyism and it's state interventionism. If we had capitalism, it would mean that remove the red tape, allow for more businesses, allow for more competition, and through that competition, goal, supply and demand, allow businesses to break through these monopolies and do not establish monopolies created and substantiated by, again, restrictive regulations, allowing foreign countries and mega corporations and major investment firms to basically control the whole country through the markets. This is the reality we're facing right now. Another question from Judy Akeem, you're saying, I'm sorry for the noise, by the way. Judy Akeem, you're saying, this sounds the same as corporate lingo. This sounds the same as corporate lingo I hear literally everywhere. Yeah, that's true. And behind that, leaders who don't actually understand requirements and risks clearly. A lot of incompetent people jumping on a bandwagon and each hoping someone else understands. It is true, it's a global problem. And this goes on for a long time. Now let me talk about something that is kind of one of the grand underbellies of, let's say, global economic policy. Let's go back in time. Early 1900s, right? Early 1900s, you had a guy named G.K. Chesterton. Anybody read G.K. Chesterton? One of my favorite writers. G.K. Chesterton, devout Catholic, made a lot of arguments. A lot of his Christian writings are very famous. But he also made a lot of arguments against not just socialism and communism, but also against monopoly. The early conservatives in the early 1900s did not recognize the problem of socialism merely as being government socialism. They also viewed socialism as market socialism, as technocracy, as union socialism through syndicalism. Socialism was not a single ideology, not just a political party. In other words, socialism was something pervasive. It was going through every single industry in the form of various state capitalists or state monopolies in order to squeeze different parts of society. They knew this at the time. That was part of the economic debate at the time. That was part of the big concern. And so when G.K. Chesterton he wrote some of his first writings in a magazine he had called G.K.'s Weekly. And he talked about the problem of monopoly, singular control, dictatorship, in other words, and that a dictator can exist both at the political level and at the business level. And this is something we don't often talk about when we talk about free market capitalism these days, right? When you have a lot of libertarians talking about free market capitalism, they're like, let the markets regulate themselves and so on. Let the corporations do what they want. And you have a lot of younger people say, well, what about the billionaires and what about the ultra wealthy and what about those guys? The reality is and this was noted by many people, G.K. Chesterton, this was noted by, you could read the book, for example, Planned Chaos by Ludwig von Mises, talking about this as well, and his book Socialism, which I often recommend and everybody should read. The problems that people observe within capitalism are not the products of capitalism. It is phony capitalism. The problems many people observe within true capitalism are the products of socialism introduced into the capitalist system. The state capitalist monopoly, as Vladimir Lenin would put it, meaning socialism. State capitalism, as the Chinese Communist Party calls it, meaning socialism. This is the problem. The idea that you can establish mini dictatorships by controlling the businesses and then using the businesses regulated into mini monopolies through regulations, which give them artificial monopolies and eliminate their competition, of course, by extension of that, in order to basically dominate a country. And what does that mean for America? It means that private companies are not held to the Constitution in the same way the federal government is, meaning they can violate free speech laws, they can violate laws around belief. Private businesses, for example, didn't necessarily have to. When they say with the COVID mandates, for example, and they say, well, it violates my belief, private businesses were able to violate that to a pretty significant degree during the COVID era. Same thing when it comes to illegal searches and seizures. Things that you're protected against, normally the government can't do, private businesses can. And by using private business as the glove of government tyranny, they've been able to manipulate private businesses and manufacture mass monopolies as pseudo-government enterprises. And by the way, this is even stated publicly by some globalist organizations. The idea of a shared global governance, for example, or the World Economic Forum was big on this whole thing, using NGOs, mega corporations, community leaders, activist organizations, and investment firms as having equal seats at the table of government. The shared global governance, and using that to basically trample on constitutionally protected rights because private businesses were able to do it. This is a big problem that people mistake for capitalism. This is not capitalism. Another question, double 4077. You're saying, Rand Paul said something last night that amounted to Mexico is more of a drug trafficker than Venezuela. What's your take on this, Josh? It's true. Venezuela, the main export of Venezuela on the drug trade is cocaine. Mexico basically traffics almost everything into the United States. Mexico, I would say, is a narco state. A lot of their government is compromised by the cartels, unfortunately. People don't like to say it, but it's true. You have entire regions of Mexico where the government is literally the cartel. The cartels run the hospitals, the cartels run the schools, the cartels control the culture, the cartels are the police, the cartels are the police chiefs, the local government officials put into place by the cartels, or at least protecting the cartels. And if anybody tries stopping the cartels, they use the arms of the state to stop the people trying to stop the cartels in many cases. Now, it's not to say the entire country is compromised, but a lot of it is. And how do we know that? Because any government official who tries stopping them gets murdered. They murder them, right? Mexico is a cartel narco state. And a lot of their industry is illegal immigration, remittances, artificial squeezes on American industries, artificial monopolies being put up by bad trade deals, and drug trafficking. They're a narco state. And the United States has not really wanted to go after them because, you know, they do have legitimate business. In fact, to be fair, a lot of their economy is manufacturing. And a lot of that does have to do with America having handed them large-scale industries through NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and then later renegotiated by Trump. A lot of the auto industry and so on is Mexico. And so the United States has largely propped up the entire Mexican economy on the legitimate and the illegitimate level. Now, the problem you have when a lot of your economy is based on illegal workers working here, then sending money home, drug traffickers, drug trade, taking advantage of Americans, scammers, and so on, is you don't really want to stop it. Because if you stop it, well, that's against your interests, which is why you actually have government systems in Mexico that govern American populations. And so the Mexican system actually within its own government extends into the United States. And they actively defend criminality. They actively defend criminality. Now, why does America tolerate this? I don't know, you tell me. If you were to ask me and I were to tell you honestly, I think it's because a lot of the American industry has for a long time wanted illegal workers. They view it as, and a lot of them make money off it. Now imagine you're a local government official and you have a lot of money in real estate. And I'm not going to name names here. Or you have a lot of money in certain stocks that happen to, you know, be tied into Mexican interest, right? How do you increase the value of your holdings? Well, you create policies that make the value of your holdings increase. Let's just use real estate as an example of this. Let me tell you some of the mafia stuff happening with real estate, okay? And I know this because I've been given evidence on this in the past that I did not end up pursuing because the guy who investigated before me got murdered. So I won't name names or locations, but let me tell you a story, okay? There was a significant case in the United States. I was given significant evidence of this more than a decade ago. I no longer have it. It was too long ago. But there were local officials in the United States who were involved with cartels. Some of this was tied in with also Chinese street gangs. So it was operations between Mexican organized crime and Chinese organized crime. You had district attorneys involved with it, you had judges involved with it, you had police departments involved with it, which makes it very hard to investigate without getting murdered. What they were doing was this, and let me give you a few more examples. The guy who investigated it before me, very skinny guy, they found him dead, quarter-inch hole in the back of his head, and the police cremated his body and said he died of a heart attack because he was overweight. He was not overweight, he was skinny, like skinny. And yeah, quarter-inch hole in the back of your head, and you died because of a heart attack? Interesting, right? Cremated his body, evidence destroyed, it would never go anywhere. There's nothing you can do about it. Anyways, on this point, this was the case that he was investigating and had collected the evidence for. What was happening was that you had a collaboration taking place. And anybody ever see the movie called Chinatown? It's kind of a twisted movie, but it's like a crime noir film. Jack Nicholson. It's a good movie, kind of twisted theme. There's some real twisted themes, but good noir crime film if you're into that kind of stuff. It was a very similar scandal to that. What you had was local corrupt officials working together with gangs. They were basically artificially causing crime. They were creating crime, right? The local officials were not enforcing proper law enforcement because they had judges on their side, they had DAs on their side, and they had corrupt police on their side, and gangs. These organized crime groups were causing crime and then not enforcing law to clamp down on it. And what was happening was that was causing the housing prices to go down, right? Obviously, if you're in a crime-ridden neighborhood, it's very expensive, right? What they were doing then is they were buying up real estate, and the gangs were stealing homes from elderly people. There are certain ways you can actually steal the deeds of homes using scams and so on. And so these Mexican gang members and the Chinese gang members were stealing homes, and local officials were buying up, undervalued properties because of the crime. Then what they were doing, and this was a multi-year type stuff, they were then saying, hey, new government official coming in, working with the gangs, working with these cartels. Local government official comes in, hey, I'm going to fix crime. We're going to be tough on crime. The mafia was puppeteering the whole thing. Right? They were all in cahoots with each other. So what does it mean when you're tough on crime? Well, the mafia, the Chinese mafia and the Mexican organized cartel groups, they stop committing crime, and then all the little street kids committing crime, what happens? Well, they either get arrested because the police start doing their jobs and the DAs actually start prosecuting them, and the judges actually start sending them to jail because you had judges and at least one prosecutor in cahoots with this. They start actually doing their dang jobs, right? What happens? Well, crime obviously goes down. And then on the criminal side of it, there's a network among thieves, right? If you still had guys committing crimes, the mafia would threaten or kill them. I'm talking Chinese mafia and Mexican cartels. They would threaten or kill them. And what happens? Well, hey, crime goes down. It worked. Behold my grand policies. Aren't I a great public official? The government official gets credit for it. Everybody involved in the real estate industry, the values of their property all go up because the clamp down on crime worked. So they bought up all the properties while they were artificially causing crime. Prices go up once it's a good neighborhood again. And then the values of their holdings all increase 3 or 4-fold, and they all get rich. That was the thing that was happening. I know about this. I've talked to other people and found out this is happening in many parts of the United States. This is apparently a relatively common form of organized crime. And you don't need a lot to do it. All you need is at least one corrupt judge, one corrupt official, and one corrupt DA, and then gangs, which are everywhere anyways, working together. And even if you can get a gang to have their own people run for office, they can do this. And then you get scammers involved to steal properties. This is a pretty big form of organized crime in the United States. And that's what's been happening. And that's just one example of it. That's one small example of the type of organized crime that's been happening. They do the same thing on drug trade. They do the same thing on marijuana grows. Hey, public official, let's decriminalize marijuana. And then we'll allow the cartels to establish grow houses, make it cheaper for them to do it illegally than legally, and then let them strong arm all the competitors out of business and create a massive cartel state propped up and protected by government regulations allowing, decriminalizing this whole thing. They do the same thing there. This is a type of crime that happens industry by industry. Again, and all you need to do it is a handful of corrupt officials working with the gangs. That's all you need to do it. And I don't know how common, but I do know I've talked to other investigative journalists and private investigators who told me that they've investigated very similar things. This is happening in many parts of the United States, unfortunately. That said, on that great note, let me know what you think. Do you think that do you think that Trump should carry out, strikes on gangs and so on in Mexico? Do you think that something else needs to be done? Do you think Americans are the ones to blame for this because, people here buy the drugs? What should we do about it? Should we just legalize the crime because Americans want to buy it? You tell me. What is the solution? That said, join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time for more happy-go-lucky discussions. I'm sorry for being so intense lately also. I feel like we need to, maybe we'll have like a cute puppy day and we'll just watch like viral videos of like cats and puppies or something. I don't know. Maybe we'll find something pleasant. Join me again tomorrow, we'll find out. That said, folks, thank you all so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you tomorrow. And in the meantime, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.